Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, Samuel Iling-Junior and Enzo Barrenechea are Aston Villa players, and Douglas Luiz has so sadly left us. No, he's not dead, but he may as well be because I'm that sad. How you doing, mate?
You know what I topped the last episode with, where I was like, yeah, these player announcements, these are the best types of podcasts. So all the other titles, these are my favourites. I completely retract that, actually.
Yeah.
This one is a bit bittersweet, isn't it? I think let's start off on the right foot. We're a positive podcast first and foremost, mate. We've signed two exceptionally talented players here that are no doubt going to be real assets to the squad. But we have lost one that, you can just tell by the structure of this deal, right? That, Juventus deemed to be of a better quality than kind of two of these players combined. The fact that it's two players plus cash tells you that, there is a difference in how these terms kind of players were valued. And I think for someone like Barrenechea or Iling-Junior, they're very young. They're players that Villa are going to look to mould and to model into Unai's kind of style of play. But I think there will be kind of, as it is when you sign any young players, particularly ones that have never played in this country before, that, there might be a kind of embedding in process. It's not going to be, I can't imagine two signings that we're looking to plug into the first team and really hit the ground running. I think for Samuel Iling-Junior, it's an interesting one, considering we've just announced the signing of Ian Maatsen, who's someone that also plays on that left-hand side. Will we use him more as a fullback? Will we use him more of a winger? There's a lot of questions when you sign kind of any young players, but particularly as part of a swap package, it's a very interestingly structured deal for sure, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that, the sort of the general feeling around Luiz leaving doesn't sort of loom over these two players. Like it shouldn't. I don't think it will, but like you don't want these two guys to sort of feel not as welcome. And listen, I'm sure, from the moment we sort of step foot in Villa Park, these guys will get the warmest welcome. But, I think for them, they've kind of joined on not, I don't want to say like terrible terms, but like not the best, just with these sort of weird swap deals. And I guess the sort of like big picture, wider lens look at how PSR and everything. So hopefully, these guys aren't too sort of affected or bothered by that, I guess. Have to acknowledge the Freudian slip in our podcast, mate. We said he played it with Frosinone in Serie B. He actually played in Serie A last season. We didn't know that, guys. So thanks for all the comments reminding us. They got relegated, but we did know that. I thought we'd acknowledge that on the pod.
Yeah, apologies.
But yeah, easy mistake to make when you're recording as many podcasts as we do back to back. But I think what is really like exciting about this deal, mate, is, we've said so many times, we're not necessarily going to go and sign the biggest stars, the biggest names with like the craziest potential, but these are two, young lads, 20 and 23 years old respectively, that, have played arguably, a really good amount of football for both of their ages at a very, very high level, and can ultimately be moulded into the vision that Unai Emery has for this football club. What is that vision? I couldn't actually tell you right now, because I think from the sorry, bro's still going again. First half season where we had Unai to then our first full season of Unai last season, like two pretty different styles of football, really. And I think it's fair to assume that with the links to Weston, who was a player that we were talking about as part of this deal a couple of weeks ago, obviously fell through that part of it, but even Conor Gallagher as well. I think it's fair to assume that the next evolution of Unai Emery's system is going to be an interesting one. And as you say, mate, Maatsen and Iling-Junior both can occupy similar positions on that left-hand side. So not necessarily pre-season, but when the Premier League starts, Champions League, it's going to be interesting to see how we line up with these players, especially because I think, there will be another evolution of that.
I think sometimes when you kind of sell a player, and I think if there's one thing that we've learned from the sale of Jack Grealish, it's that sometimes it's best to not try and replace a player. You can actually more kind of, I think in the Jack sale, we tried to, there's that kind of famous quote from Christian Burzlow where we tried to kind of accumulate the output that Jack Grealish gave us through a kind of number of players. And to be honest with you, with the kind of numbers that Bailey was putting up last season, it's genuinely taken us kind of 2 or 3 years from that point. Some of the players, Danny Ings, for example, who have been sold off the back of that deal to finally kind of get a player that output-wise could match what Jack was giving us. And so it's not always kind of easy to do that. But I think sometimes it's kind of, you look at the parts that you've got left and you kind of think, okay, well, what maybe didn't Douglas Luiz have that an ideal player would have? And I think that's an interesting way to look at it. And I think with the kind of signings of Conor Gallagher and Barrenechea, I think that's kind of pointing to a midfield that's maybe a little bit harder in the press, a little bit more combative, kind of, if we're going to be playing John McGinn a little further up, whilst, we've got Boubacar Kamara is obviously injured as well, but I think when he's there, we really do lack a kind of a defensive presence. And whilst, Conor Gallagher and Enzo aren't exactly a kind of the unit that would sit in a sixth position and kind of pin up a back line, they do snap into challenges and they perhaps get themselves around the pitch a little bit more. And I think with Dougie, it was almost more what he could do on the ball, but I think Villa definitely off the ball. I think we definitely saw, not a lot, but quite a few times last season where maybe Villa's midfield, particularly towards the end of the season, was a little bit easier to play through than we'd have liked. And you're kind of thinking that, let's be honest, in the Champions League, the way that we defend, the way that we break on the counter-attack, the way that we press, the way that we structure ourselves and kind of act defensively is going to be very important. There are going to be games in the Champions League where we do have less of the ball, where we have to kind of be good at the counter-attack and have a midfield that can position themselves well and get into challenges. And I kind of think that maybe that's the route that we're looking to go down here. And then you've got the kind of, you're getting out to the players on the wing, like someone like Ian Matson, like Samuel Iling-Junior, like your Leon Baileys, that have pace that can get in behind and look to cause trouble from the wide areas. The one thing that I will say that someone like Barrenechea and Conor Gallagher maybe don't give us is the goal output that Douglas Luiz did, which I'm not sure we ever really relied on him for goals, but he was becoming in the last couple of seasons almost good value for kind of double figures in all comps, really. And I think that's one thing that maybe we will miss. And I think that whilst it was never really kind of penned in Douglas's role that, look, we're going to need you to give us that kind of output a season, it definitely did come in handy. And I mean, there were so many home games definitely before Christmas that he dragged us through with goals alone. So that's kind of the next point, is that, with maybe Duran leaving as well, with these kind of two players in, where is the output goal-wise perhaps? But I think defensively there are two really interesting profiles.
Yeah, definitely, mate, definitely. And I think it was 4 penalties of 9 of Dougie's goals. So, not to sort of discredit any of those goals, but I mean, that's going to be a problem to replace anyway, because seemingly no one in our squad's capable of scoring a bloody penalty, are they, mate? But you're right. He'd arrive into the box so often, so late, and receive the ball and have a little, a 6 to 10 yard tap in, and we will miss that. That is something that will deeply be missed. Dougie's he's so good, man, and I think it's kind of like the optics of the deal from like a Villa perspective are kind of like, we're going to look back on this in 5, 10, 15 years time. And maybe I'm showing my age here, but certainly in our lifetime, Dan, I think it's fair to say Douglas Luiz is one of, if not the most technically gifted footballers that has played for Aston Villa Football Club. Like, technical ability wise, absolutely phenomenal. I can tell the comments are going to go absolutely mad and tell me that David Platt or Merson or whoever, were technically better footballers than Douglas Luiz. We'll let you guys have that debate in the discussion. But again, from our perspective as 24, 25-year-olds, Douglas Luiz is that guy. He's been absolutely phenomenal. And I think the one thing that like sort of upsets me is you've got it's kind of like, the only way I can describe it is like, not with everyone. I think, I do think most people have sort of bid Douglas like a fair goodbye and, understand all good things come to an end. And, he's given 5 years service, especially in modern day football. It's kind of unheard of, really. And we've sort of been on this whole journey with Douglas, but there has been like a small sort of minority reaction where it's kind of like a high school breakup, and it's like, well, he's been shit for the past 6 months anyway, and ever since him and Alicia got back together, he's been, his form's turned down. That's a load of nonsense anyway. We're going to look back on this, and you'll be watching games back, when they show them on Sky Sports or whatever, and we'll go, oh my God, this guy played for Aston Villa. He didn't just play, he hooped.
Yeah. It is a sad one, man. I totally agree that Douglas Luiz is the most technically gifted player that kind of I've ever seen, and going to be real, I don't actually think it's close. I think the way that when he was at his best, he was a genuine joy to watch. I think he was really starting to get himself into that conversation of one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. And I think, first and foremost, to wish him well. I think he's gone to a perfect league for his skill set, particularly under the new kind of Thiago Motta regime at Juventus. The football that they play a little bit more expansive than it has been under Allegri. I think he'll fit in like a glove there, and I don't think it'll take too long for him to endear himself to those fans. But yeah, I think it is going to be tough, and I think particularly for the players coming in, it's always difficult when you join in the wake of any player leaving. I've been very vocal on this podcast and kind of attributed a lot of what Leon Bailey struggled with, basically since he walked through the door, to the fact that it was, okay, Jack's gone, but here's your replacement, and the signing at the time fell really flat because he was one of the best players that. I think when he joined, I don't know if we'd signed a player of his ability in a long, long time. I remember kind of feeling that, this is one of the best players in terms of the level that they're coming in at that we've signed in my lifetime. And I just can't get excited about it. And so I think there is always that negative. And look, whilst I don't think, there is the doom and gloom about Dougie leaving that there was with Jack, I do agree that kind of reaction of, I think a high school breakup is a really nice way to put it, mate. It's kind of like, well, I never even liked her anyway. That's basically what we're doing, which is obviously nonsensical because Douglas was, a huge player in the squad, one of the biggest misses. And I think that, in a way, I'm glad that it's done. I do think it was starting to drag on a little bit. I think we kind of need to rip the Band-Aid off and begin this process kind of without him. And I do think that we'll continue to add through this midfield. I don't think we're looking necessarily at Barrenechea as being the player that will step in and replace Douglas Luiz. But yeah, it's a tricky one to kind of gauge, and I think we'll learn a lot about these players in pre-season. But yeah, Dougie will of course be a huge miss. But I think the club, as I said, the mission necessarily won't be to replace him profile-wise. I think we will look to try and maybe look at what Douglas Luiz didn't bring us, where his skill set wasn't quite aligned, and trying to make it up in the aggregate there. So be interesting approach, and I am sad for Douglas, but on the plus side for him, he's obviously joined a huge club, one that he's more than capable of playing for and playing very well for. And who knows, with Aston Villa in the Champions League, there may well be a return for Douglas Luiz to Villa Park. Yeah.
There's going to be so many narratives set up in the Champions League, isn't there? You can already tell we're going to get Juventus, we're going to get Real Madrid to have that Jude versus Villa narrative. It's all going to happen. Obviously bid him, farewell, and I think it's clear from all of the messaging as well. He's obviously left in goodwill. I think another sort of sticking point, with some fans was that had a contract offer on the table in January, didn't re-sign. You can kind of understand. I think at the end of the day, he chose to re-sign when there was interest with Arsenal, and it looked like he was going to leave for as little as £35 million to Arsenal, which would have been disastrous. I think a lot of the sort of talk around this transfer to Juve is that Dougie wanted to make sure he left for a top team in Europe, out of respect for Aston Villa, which if you didn't want me to cry already, Dougie, well done, because I am. But yeah, it's a great deal for him personally. He'll play for one of Europe's premier clubs, and yeah, we'll miss him, man. But I'm sure there'll be a European reunion for sure. It's just one of them, innit? Especially with where we're trying to achieve and where we're trying to get to. We're going to have so many players pinched to top European clubs, and we already experienced this with Grealish. It's not something that haven't experienced before either. You know, when you look back to the deals like James Milner, Stuart Downing, Ashley Young, Gareth Barry, all leaving Villa when we were on the sort of the cusp of something great and exciting to go and join. You know, obviously more established, more successful top half teams. Maybe you could take Stuart Downing out of that equation because Liverpool were kind of in their banter era, but like obviously they have the draw of it being Liverpool. So yeah, I mean, like now hopefully we don't have to sell anyone else. It doesn't look like we do, mate, does it?
Well, I think that's the thing, right? Is that, you know, with Douglas Luiz, I think it is always interesting that, you know, you rarely sell players that you don't want to sell. Like we don't really hear like proper transfer rumors for Ollie Watkins, for Ezri Konsa, for John McGinn, for Emi Martinez. Like you get the occasional, you know, the Sun will say that insert name of top 6 club here or interested in Ollie Watkins in a £100 deal or something like that. But, you know, it's never like genuine concrete interest. Whereas for Dougie, obviously there was, you know, Arsenal placed a bid for Douglas Luiz. And I just don't think you do that if there's not some inkling that a player would be open to a move. You know, and this is no criticism, does it? Like, I'm surprised Dougie's lasted as long as he did, given how genuine, like, you know, it will be remembered how good of a footballer he was. And I think that's a testament to just how talented and just how good the comeback was, because his first couple of years were really, really rocky when we were relying on him in the 6th position. And, you know, I think at that point, if you would have said that, you know, Douglas Luiz will do 5 seasons here and leave as one of, you know, the better midfielders this club has had in the 21st century, which, you know, I don't think people will agree with. I think you would have got 1 or 2 funny looks for sure. And so I think it is a credit to Dougie that he's lasted as long as he did. But yeah, I mean, you know, as I said, you know, you don't get smoke without fire, and there have been a lot of talk about Dougie leaving for some time, and so you kind of hope that there has been some contingency planning, and that you're right that Douglas Luiz was kind of earmarked as the player that we would sell if push came to shove. And I do think of, you know, say those players that I just reeled off there, that Douglas Luiz is the most replaceable, whilst I do think he's actually probably the best footballer of the ones I've just mentioned. You know, where are we going to go? You know, Ollie Watkins, 27 goals this season, 13 assists. Where are Villa going to go and get a 40-goal contribution a season striker from? Where are you going to get another John McGinn, another Emi Martinez? Those two are kind of more personality-based, but that's a huge factor. Those are your kind of the captain and default vice captain of this club. And we all know how good Ezri Konsa is. The fact that he's English, you know, those are very difficult to come by. So I do think naturally the arrow kind of ended up pointing at Doug, and maybe that's something the club have known for a little while.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. It's like the lesser of several evils, I think. And I think like it's kind of the fact that, you know, this deal has been announced on the 1st of July, you know, officially after that PSR deadline. That chapter has ended. You know, we've closed that book. We're opening a new one now, and the fact we're here and we've done so much business already. You know, 1st of July we've signed Lewis Dobbin. We've signed these two. We've signed Ian Matson, Ross Barkley, seemingly coming through the door. Hopefully, it's all gone a little bit quiet there. You know, we're cooking. Just let's let these guys cook. That's all we can do, man. And yeah,
Absolutely.
very excited to see these guys play. I didn't realise as well, actually. I say I didn't realise. I did. It just hadn't occurred to me. I've actually seen both of these guys train and play while I was on a work trip last summer. I was at a Juventus Open training. Obviously didn't have much of a clue who either of them were really, and I was sort of only there for one reason, and that was like Weston McKennie and Paul Pogba, and you know, the sort of the higher name, the higher profile players, who, may I say, were absolutely wonderful. Not only in training but just as people. So yeah, I'm excited to see this because I've sort of unknowingly seen these guys do their thing, and whilst I can't comment necessarily on their ability or potential or whatever, it's like a little full circle moment for me.
Very nice, mate. Very nice. I like that a lot. But of all the narratives, that's definitely the best.
Yeah, let's take the positives, man. Let's just Dougie's out of sight, out of mind until the Champions League's back. But yeah, guys, let us know your thoughts on the deals in the comment section down below. And I hope you guys are as excited about seeing these guys play as Dan and I are. And yeah, if you're listening on Apple and Spotify, make sure you follow, download, share the podcast. It helps out more than you guys could know. And if you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and up the villa.